Welcome to the channel. In this video we're going to be taking a look at the release notes for the Empyrion 1.8 update, which was released on the 15th of June 2022. Now before we get started, a couple of points. The first one is I'm not going to read every single line in this release note for two reasons. One, the print is very small, and two, that there are sections which are pretty technical relating to setting up multi-servers and various other elements of the game, and I'll be completely upfront. Some of it I just wouldn't even be able to describe what I was actually talking about, so some of those areas we'll skip over straight away. The second thing is that I've done a couple of test starts, so as we go through some of the changes I will be kind of commenting on my experiences for those very short gameplays. I haven't played it extensively, just about 45 minutes on each one, just to get a feel for the different types of start. And finally, if any of you follow my Reforged Eden series, I have started that series with the new update, and it does seem to be save game compatible, but what I've kind of noticed, especially with respect to some of the changes, they haven't taken effect. So I'm assuming that to get the full effect of the changes for this update, we're either going to have to wait for the compatibility update for Reforged Eden, or possibly start a new game. Although, to be honest, the changes in this update would be difficult to justify and restart in the context of Reforged Eden. We're just going to get straight into it. It says, after 4 experimental versions, we're releasing the public version of 1.8 Empyrion Galactic Survival today. The main themes of version 1.8 are following: a new game start on the moons of Akua, Ningus, Masperon, and Skillion. I'll be completely upfront, I'm not too sure what they mean by moons, because the 4 starts I've looked at all start on what we would call the traditional planets. If any of you guys have got any insight into that, feel free to chuck it in the comments. A new and improved Robinson Protocol tutorial and the first iterations of a quest system. It says improved AI behavior, including all new creatures on land, in water, and in the air. We'll talk a bit about more of those as we go down. First batch to visually overhaul playfields, including all new models for above ground rock resources and new decors. And of course, down here we got this very important notice. It says, because we added the new decoration and more plants, all our official servers will be wiped. For modders, you have to update the Unity version 2021.3. So that's for anyone who's kind of creating modding. The game start has been completely reworked and may be very different from the previous game experience of the default scenario, especially for players who've been in the game for a while. There might be some new strategies that to be pursued on the way up to space. Exploration will be a more important role than it was in the previous start version. Now, to expand that paragraph in the context of my short experiments of each start, the antenna seems to have disappeared. If any of you played the initial start, you'll be aware that you land in an area and you get lots of resources around, you get wreckage. Now, the game still starts with you crashing to the planet in a pod, but the wreckage seems to be either non-existent or very rare. Also, the conveniently placed minerals around the starting area seem to have gone. Now, based on my limited starting, is what you get now is a message which points you in a direction towards a legacy monolith. Now, what you get next to that monolith depends on the start. So like if you start on Akua, you get a science station. I think if you start on, can't remember which one it is now, but you get a base. And if you start on another one, you get something also virtually just a large wreckage. So the start on each planet now has a slightly different flavor. And if any of you are interested in that, what I'm planning to do is a video where I will do a short section on each start, just to show you, give you guys exactly what the landing conditions are and what you've got to do initially. Also, we give you a view of the new minerals and plants and what the biomes look like as well. Now, the next thing is the tutorial for our new players. We have revised the Robinson Protocol tutorial on the starting moon of Akua. The new tutorial starts after you crash on the planet with picking up your equipment lying around. The new Robinson Protocol keeps track of all your activities and gives you situational tips and hints whenever you do something for the first time. There's no prescribed procedure to follow. Just try it out and explore the surrounding there. Now, the Robinson Protocol now includes almost a direct tutorial with actually video inserts or audio inserts. So it's a lot more detailed. However, as it says in the paragraph, it only activates automatically now when you're on Akua. If you want the other starts, it's optional. You have to turn it on yourself. So just moving down, it says quests. Once you've gotten around the world a bit, you can accept one of several quests at a time from the NPCs. Each quest is related to a specific activity. For example, finding certain animal or obtaining an item. You'll find that the corresponding quest item is specifically marked in your inventory. It cannot be sold and will not be lost when you die. You can always see the progress of your quests and exactly what you need to do to share them in the PDA or the associated factions question logs. You may also drop quests there without having to visit the game giver. Now, this I haven't really looked at, but there is also a kind of sub quest which I mentioned in the intro, where when you say you discover a certain plant, you get a bit of a reward which you can sell. So I'm not exactly too sure how these quests actually active. However, by looking at the picture, I'm guessing that you will get certain interactions with the Talon or Polaris or probably even Xerax to do certain missions. It's also worth noting that when I did the Akua start, I got the fright of my life when I actually turned around after the pod looking down for the survival tools, because a Talon literally walked up behind me and walked past me, and I thought, well, that's a great start. So we're going to come down here. So now it says updated playfields. It says alien, arid, barren, metal, desert, lava, nascent, moon forest, moon ice 2, moon lava 2, prairie, temperate plateau, and temperate swamp. And if you look at the picture down here, you can see that the foliage now looks a lot more realistic, and you can definitely see the difference on the different starter planets now. But I am impressed. In fact, I would go as far as saying I actually like the format. So we're going to move down here. It says optimizations. We have worked on some optimization for the game that should result in your FPS increasing by at least 10 or more when inside or outside a structure. Player made bases and vessels, POIs, etc., depending on your hardware. I must admit I've got quite powerful hardware, and of course when you start the game the load is quite low, so I can't really comment on that. It says LOD distance, low, medium and high, now sets the distance for render range objects. Now the game has always had field of view, but what they've done now is added a LOD slider. So if you've got performance issues or you've got a machine that's not as is aging a bit, what you can do is reduce the LOD down to medium or low. And what that means is if you're going through, say, a fairly busy landscape like this with lots of trees, it just takes some of the pressure off from the rendering because the game isn't rendering things in the far distance. So we're now going to move on. It says new NPCs added. And it says gliding overseer. Now, I have seen this. As you can see, it's on the desert planet. But I haven't, because it was a start, I wasn't able to get up and find out what it actually does, whether you can kill it and whether you get any rewards from it or whether it's hostile. But you can definitely see it floating in the sky. Now we're down to, it says annoying mosquito, which currently stuns the player. And it does stun the player, but it doesn't do any harm, and the stun doesn't last that long. But I think the real threat with this mosquito is if you happen to be in a situation with, say, the grasshopper type creatures, or worse still, the dinosaurs. If you get stunned by one of these, you could be in trouble. You can also kill them for a reward, and I think you get carbon, I think. But we'll be talking a little bit more about carbon in a little while. This butterfly is on Akua. You can see actually it says here. So it says Masperon and Swamp. So this is actually on a swamp planet. This is on Skillion. And then what we got down here on Akua is a butterfly, which gives a bandage heal. And so what it means is if you're walking around, or what you'll find is one of these will flutter close to you, and then you'll get a message saying you'll be healed up, or you're healthy again. You get the little green icon saying that things are going good, which is fun. And then you've also got these salvage drones on Skillion. I haven't actually encountered them next to POI, but I did had a random encounter with a couple of them, and they're not aggressive, and you can actually kill them for tradable items. Now the next one is really interesting. It says a fish, Akua, water, deep water. Now I'll be honest, I did a little bit of running around in lakes and I've yet to see a fish. And my question is can the weapons fire underwater to kill them, or whether they're just cosmetic? If any of you guys know otherwise, feel free to chuck it in the comments. Now we move on to something that's a little bit more interesting. It says status effects and medical item changes. On screen messages for mitigation and cures for status effects updated. These can be seen on the top center of the hub and in the player inventory window stats. Place your cursor over them. Yeah. Now, personally, I think this is the most significant change in the update. I know some of you guys will dispute it, but if any of you follow my series, and I've seen other players have the same problem, you get these symbols come up, and first thing you think is, what is it? And then what do I need to find to cure? Well, what you get now is at the top of the screen, as it says, is you get this message at the top. So like here, it says you've got an open fracture. You can mitigate it with bandages. You can heal it with first aid kit, medical station type 3. And when cured, you end up with an open wound and a closed fracture. So it actually gives you the whole prognosis of what you actually get now when something happens. And the top one is an example of the message at the top of the screen, and then the second one here is what happens when you scroll over inside your inventory. And I think that is very useful, especially when you've got multiple infections or things that you don't get very often. This will give you the background, exactly what you want to know. So moving on, it says change first aid kits now restores 250 hit points. Detox decon kit do not restore health anymore. Oh, this could be painful. Health pack does not cure open wound anymore. So they've actually made some changes here. Now I don't know if I can see it, but what there is that there are 3 types of health kits. I'm not sure if it actually lists it. Let me just see. And then we've got down here, it's change to medical item config. It says remove negative buffs from all items except radiation immunity shot, which is unchanged. Energy pills have a positive buff change from 0.8 to 1. Bad trip change from 0.1 to 0.35. And poison food change from 0 to 0.1. So now if you're popping energy pills, what you will get is a risk of getting a bad trip or poison food. And so that's something you're going to need to do. And there's also the adrenaline shot. Now has a chance of 0.2 a bad trip. So if you're one of these players that likes to shoot up lots of adrenaline shots early in the game so you can run around the planet, be aware that you could also now pick up a bad trip. There's PDA changes. I think this is an area now where we are actually staggering to some of the more technical elements. So I'm just going to kind of skate across them quite quickly. So this is to do with kind of information from the PDA. So there's PDA check player levels up, value parameters. So it looks like they've actually changed that a little bit. Saving the PDA check player to stat changed. Yeah, well, we'll just skate over that a little bit. It says config file changes. I'm not even going to go near that, guys. If any of you want to that, I suggest you get the release notes and read it. So we're now going to move down to miscellaneous. Now miscellaneous is quite interesting actually, because what we've got in here is a lot of changes which will impact existing players from the get-go. It's also a potential source of confusion for anyone who's looking at old videos to learn the game to suddenly encounter these new shapes here. There's added automated machine translation for German, French, Italian, yes, is that Estonian and Russia, and the test process. They've updated Unity to 2021.32. Now the next one is really interesting. It says now it's possible to equip light armor and boosters from the inventory without an armor locker. So effectively what that means is that if you want to put on or take off light armor, you can now drag it from the inventory onto the various boxes, and you can also put in boosters as well. So what that means for anyone who's not familiar with the game, it means that the early game hunt for an armor locker isn't quite so important anymore. Now, the next one, I can see Vermilion and Ravian wiping their hands with this in glee over making our life a little bit more difficult in the future. There's core handling logic changes now that if the last core gets removed, the structure is set to no faction. Old if any core is removed. This allows POIs with more than one core for higher difficulty. Well, as soon as I read that, I thought, yeah, Vermilion, we're going to be having a POI with 2 cores in it. We're going to have to destroy 1 core and then go off looking for another core. And I think that also stops us cheating some of the big POIs like the Black Pyramid, where if any of you are not familiar, the Black Pyramid is a really epic POI. But if you know where the core is, which is actually in the top section of the building, you can bypass all the difficulty by just going up, blasting a hole in the top. Now, having multiple cores will mitigate any kind of little cheats like that. I think the next one a bit technical is there's been a change to the actual detector now. Now this isn't in the icon inside of your inventory. This is the what you will see when you when you have it in your hand of the play avatar. Moving down, what we've got now is it says new resource rock models. I can't remember what one they are now. Now it's interesting in the fact that they've now added carbon, but I'm not sure whether that carbon is only available on the starter planets or whether that will be added on further on. So moving down, what we've got now is new resource models. So there's been changes to the resource rock modules. It's also worth noting that on certain of the starter planets now, you don't get, as I've already mentioned, you don't get the friendly deposits, and I think it's on, I can't remember the names now. I was about to say Omicron, but I think it's Skillion. What you're going to have to spend a lot more time running around trying to find this, because the usual resources, like I think even iron, is there are no deposits on Skillion, but correct me if I'm wrong on that. But and I think this emphasizes the difference with your starting strategies now according to the planet. But as I've already mentioned, what I'll be doing is I'll be doing a video where I'll be looking at the different starts and talking about them. We've now got to what you could call the technical changes. I'm not going to go through them, guys, because most of them are patch fixes and various other bits, and some of them are quite complicated. So hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it interesting. As I said, already mentioned, I will be doing a separate video, possibly it will be out tomorrow, where I'll be basically doing a short look at each of the 4 starts. If you guys got any opinions or observations about the new update, feel free to chuck it in the comments. But until next time, whatever you do, enjoy your gaming.